So the bad pennies are back.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? I'm Sho,
I'm Alan.
and we are back to talk about good qualities of manhood. And today's topic is
Well, it's still under the overall topic of, of developing good character.
There you go, developing good character. That's
developing
exactly
good character. So I know it's such it's. I would be willing to bet that if you're watching this, you're going like, yeah, you're already writing us off, or they're talking about being good and character and, all of that bullshit that I'm not that interested in. But really, you need to be interested in this. And it's not what you think. And it's not about behaving, and it's not about being a good boy or any of those kinds of things, because it's sort of what comes up for a lot of men. And especially young men who are predisposed to not behaving and to not following the rules, and we get it, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a whole nother level of being and developing yourself so that you ultimately have a great life and have the life you want to have. And we're here to help you get it.
Yeah.
We're here to help you actually do the things that work, that men have been doing for thousands of years, that they discovered long ago are conducive to having a successful life and a good life, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. So we've talked about a lot of stuff under this umbrella.
Yeah, men of good character. So a couple of things that we addressed, and you can go back and look at other episodes, is we did talk about code of honor. We talked about just honesty and integrity. We went over wait where's some of the
do you not remember all the things?
What is
we talked about a lot of stuff.
Everything's been like,
I have actually kind of a small list. So we talked about consistency,
yes,
and we talked about code of conduct, actually,
right,
and we talked about honor. And
we talked about caring.
And then we talked about expectations and how damaging it is to go through life having expectations, and how your ego actually is really at the source of most of the things that go wrong in your life.
Right.
Not everything. And so we don't want to make ego a bad word.
No.
And in this society, ego tends to be a bad word.
Well, it depends on how you use ego.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And where you use ego. But unfortunately, most men stop using ego where it belongs, and they start using it where it doesn't belong, and mostly in your relationships with other human beings. And so, like any tool, it becomes a weapon. It becomes something destructive, and so ego out of place doesn't get you what you want.
Yeah.
Okay, it just doesn't. And expectations, as we talked about at length the last time, will not get what you want, and it will only mess you up. It'll make you angry, and it'll bring up behaviors that are not, again, conducive to having a great life and being successful. All right. So and we talked about control too. Remember, we talked about what it feels like to be controlled.
Yes.
And how when you have expectations, you want to control other people,
right,
and situations. And the truth is you can't. And the more you try to control, the worse things get.
Right.
And just think about it. Just put on that hat for a while, and just think about what it was like for you when someone was trying to control you, and how well did that work? And it didn't, did it?
Especially if you're any kind of a man that actually has a character of his own. You don't want to be told what to do and formed into some other image than the one that you have for yourself. No,
you don't want to be told what to do, but there are times where in the right situations you do. But we're not going to talk about that yet. We'll get to that a little further down the road. So kind of play in our hand. So what I want to talk about today, and where we want to go, is two things. And the first one is very important before we get to the second one. And the first one is, what is really important to you? And you might want to ask, oh yeah, I don't know what's important to me. Well, maybe you don't. Because it's highly likely you haven't spent the time to figure out what really is important. Because if you did, a lot of the things you'd be doing, you wouldn't be doing anymore. Because they don't have a place. And
do you really think that do you think this is a big thing, that there's a lot of people out there that don't know what's important, don't know how to prioritize their life?
In my experience, most people.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, because
most people.
I could see, a lot of the people at least have one or two things that they know is what is most important in their life. Maybe,
but that's not enough. And the thing is that if you haven't really taken a look at all of it, how can you conduct yourself appropriately? How can you plug in and do all of the things? Because here's the thing, and this is why I'm bringing the subject up.
Okay.
We think things are important that aren't. And there's a big difference between thinking something's important and it actually being important. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
All right. We're going to differentiate between shit that's not important and shit that is important. And look, we can't tell you what's important versus what you're doing that you think is important that is not, because it's your life, right? Okay. It's your life.
Yeah.
But you got to take the time. So you're going to say, okay, how do I do that?
How?
That's what everyone wants to know. How do we do it?
How to differentiate what you think is important from what is really important.
Right. Okay. Well, you gotta spend somewhat what we call introspection.
Introspection means you're looking at yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Looking within. And
you can't lie to yourself when you do that.
Well,
a lot of people lie to themselves.
Technically you can, but you don't want to. No. And that's the whole thing. Again, this whole series, this whole podcast is built on telling the truth, the whole truth.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially with yourself. Mm-hmm. You don't want to go out in the world and just tell the whole truth to everybody, because that isn't conducive to being successful. And most people don't care. Anyway, the only person that really matters to you, the whole truth, are yourself, and maybe a few handful of people that are close to you, really close. Especially your men, especially men that you have in your life that you trust.
Yeah.
That again, like we talked about in earlier podcasts, those who will tell you the truth, but not worry about how it's going to land, because the truth is just the truth, and we know that we need to hear it, and we know that when we tell a man, ding dong, when we tell someone the truth, it's for their benefit. It's being of service. It's not something that's trying to put them down or make them wrong or any of that kind of stuff, because really there is none of that. In reality, this right and wrong stuff only applies to certain codes of society in order to have a civil society.
Okay.
So in that place, we do differentiate right and wrong, like killing people and shooting people and robbing and stealing and all of those kinds of terrible things we consider to be wrong. But what we're talking about here are letting go of all of the judgment. And when you start this process of being introspective, I call it taking stock. Right? Men have to take stock, and it's a good thing if you can take notes. Hopefully you are taking notes, but you want to take stock a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean at least once a week.
Once a week.
Once a week. And you don't have to, and then once a month, do something serious. In other words, take an hour or two to yourself.
Okay.
And write down stuff. On a weekly basis, you can just, maybe do it in your head, go over things. And here are the things that you want to look at. Okay. And again, what we're talking about here is what is really important to you.
Okay.
And you're going to start to see some things in this process that we're going to show you. And the process of this being introspective and taking stock, all right, it's got a couple of steps. One of them is taking a look at what you did today, or what you did during the week. So, and maybe a daily taking stock is not a bad thing, but what did you do today, and how did you do it, and what were the results that you produced? Did you get the results you wanted to get when you started out this morning, when you got out of bed and you were heading into your day, or not? And what were the things that you did action-wise, right, that either produced good results or did not?
Okay.
Okay.
If we're driven by results, is this saying that like at the beginning of the day you set out to do something, and did you accomplish it?
Yeah, mostly. And again, we have our daily goals, we have our weekly goals, okay. We have our monthly goals, our yearly goals, our life goals, and everything we do every day should be moving us in that direction anyway. Besides just the immediate stuff, like today, I need to get the garbage out to the street, or I have a meeting with my boss, or I have to do the sales call or whatever. I mean, there's always that immediate stuff, right?
Yeah, okay.
And if you're like me, I write that stuff down.
Okay.
All right. I write it down the day before, sometimes even a couple of days before. And as I come up on the days, I'm able to look at everything that I do in the morning and see all of the stuff. But again, that's technique. All right. That's just technique. That's logistics. It's just one way of doing things. Not everybody does things the same way.
Yeah.
Things that work for me won't necessarily work for you. Some things, some of you out there, the things I do will work great for you. So, but pay attention to that.
Yeah.
But again, at the end of the day, the process, and again, we're moving toward finding out what's really important.
What's really important.
What's really important.
Okay. So right. Taking stock on a weekly or even
a daily basis.
And taking stock means looking at
your actions and the results that are produced by them.
Okay.
Okay. Now you're going to learn some things. This is the great thing about taking stock, being introspective, is that you're going to see things, that, and notice things that you may not have noticed before. And you're going to see a pattern from day to day to day. So at the end of the week, when you spend a little more time taking a look at how you did things and what you did and what you accomplished, it's going to start to show you something. And one of the things that it will begin to show you is, and again, not through what you're thinking is important,
but what you actually see,
but what you do will reflect what is important to you. And so let me just try that. I know you want to back up again. You're like, oh, wait a minute, holy shit! What is that? All right, you're gonna see a pattern emerge, and through the actions that you take. Now, again, if you don't get the results that you're looking for, you're going to want to adjust your conduct and your behavior and the things that you do.
Okay.
And again, at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, and you're looking at it, you're going to see that even in the adjustments, that they're starting to say something about who you are and what's important to you. Not what you think is important.
Okay.
Because that's the mistake. We think things are important that are not. But ultimately, the things that are really important emerge through the things you do, the actions that you take every single day,
what you focus on, where you spend your time,
where you spend your time, and how you spend your time, your interactions with other human beings, and how you spend that time in your interactions. See, these are things that most people, I mean, look, you can go through life oblivious to this, and maybe you can get from birth to death without killing yourself at some point.
Okay.
You know, without, you know, and I maybe even literally, but it's certainly proverbially, you know, because we often do drive our cars over a cliff sometimes, our personal, you know, being cars.
Okay.
And crash. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. But you can't do that. You can't avoid those kinds of things if you're unconscious. All right. So what we're saying is that this is a process of waking up as a man. It's a process of fitting into your skin and becoming aware of things, and again, being introspective about it, taking a look at what's going on and why are you doing these things. Now, you will notice a couple of things. One, it will show you what's at least immediately important to you.
Okay.
Okay, that's one.
I'm gonna let you go.
Okay.
I have something, but
it will. Yeah. Well. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to bring that up, but it will show you things that are immediately important.
Okay.
It will also show you that things that you think are important aren't having a way in your life, having a place. In other words, you're not putting action and effort into it.
Yeah.
So even though you think it's important, it's not actually happening. All right. Now, that's important information, because at that juncture, you get to decide, am I going to leave it? Let it go?
Yeah.
Because it really isn't important? Or I really want it to be important, and now I can make some decisions about how I'm going to conduct myself so that it shows up in my life. Because remember, if it's not showing up in your life, it doesn't mean anything. If it's not coming out in an action, if it's not manifesting itself in reality, it's just a thought in your head. And thoughts aren't like unimportant. They're very important.
Yeah.
But until they manifest into reality, they're just a thought.
So
now,
here's
I know you had a stumbling block.
It's boiling in me right now. Okay, so what do you say to the people who focus on work and that's where the time and their energy goes to, is their work, but they're doing it for their family, right? So are you saying then that the work is more important than the family?
Yeah, mostly.
Wow.
But here's the thing. Again, it's a contextual deal, which we haven't gotten into context a whole lot yet.
All right.
It's a contextual deal. My experience with men is that it's not that family's unimportant. Family's a priority.
Family is a priority, but
family's a priority, but
then when you say what's important to yourself,
exactly.
That's not necessarily the same
it's a little different. And I know some of you are going crazy, going like, "Oh yeah, my family and all that kind of stuff." And I get it. You're absolutely right. So calm down and just bear with us just a little bit, because I think that we'll make some sense out of this.
Okay.
All right. So your family is probably arguably one of the most important things.
Right.
For a lot of men and women, actually, it's your family. It's your family. But if you'll notice again, how and where you put your effort and energy into, for men in particular, it's how they serve their family is by being successful. And this is a can of worms that I don't know whether we want to totally get into right now, but maybe down the line, and especially with your comments, maybe we'll do a session where we'll bring out real examples of people who were incredibly successful but neglected their families terribly. and there's a lot of them, famous ones.
Yeah. But what about the people that only work because they need to take care of the family? You know, like if they hate their job, but the only reason they go to work is because they know they need to take care of their family.
Well, I would say that most men don't work at jobs they love. They work at jobs as a way of taking care of their responsibilities and taking care of their family.
But then as far as assessing and taking stock, the way that you were saying earlier, if you're taking stock and say, okay, well, I did this at work and I did that at work and I got a promotion. I'm working on the promotion so that I can, even better
take care of my family.
Yeah.
All right. So again, that's a context.
Okay.
That's a context. That's how you're holding it. And how you're holding it will, again, show up in actions. It will show up because you won't do things at work that will jeopardize your ability to take care of your family.
Right.
It's like in the old days we used to say that it's very hard to find another job when you don't have one. Right? You go looking for a job while you still have one. It makes you more desirable. When you don't have a job, it brings a desperate quality, and people actually back away from people who are desperate because it doesn't feel good.
Okay.
Right. And even if you're not overtly putting that out into the universe, human beings pick up on it.
Okay.
They pick up on your desperation. So I'll use my dad as an example.
Okay.
My dad worked to provide for his family. And he was really, really good at his job, but I don't think he ever liked it. I don't think he ever liked it a day in his life.
My dad's the same.
And he was really, really good at it. So you got to ask yourself, and again, this is part of the introspection process, right? What's more important, the job or being good at the job you have? And that's a really important question. And that's something that can really come out in introspection. Because I think for men, it isn't the job, for most men anyway, it isn't the job you're working, it's how well you're doing it, how good you are at it, how masterful you've become at it. These are things that, again, you'll find if you start taking a look at this stuff. What's really important? Well, what's really important to men is success. And when you're being successful taking care of your family, it's because you're being successful doing your job and working and providing and doing that thing that we do really, really well.
Okay. So let's go a little further with this as far as we're taking stock on a weekly basis, and this is going to show us what is and what is not important in our lives. Non-contextually, if you're just looking at
it will show you the context that you're carrying and how that manifests into everything as well. If you've got and before we get in, because we're going to do a whole thing on context, so just you'll have to it's going to be a few episodes down the road here. Okay. But just keep in mind that when we say context, translate it into attitude. Your attitude about everything, your family, your work, the attitude you have in the car when you drive. Do you have a positive attitude, a negative attitude? Is every driver on the road terrible? I know there are a lot of terrible drivers out there. I mean, I see them every day. But how you handle that, again, do you have expectations that everybody has to be a perfect driver, and therefore when they're not, you get all angry, right? Well, another reason not to have expectations. Right. But again, what context or attitude that you're holding makes a big difference. And that is something you also need to look at as you're taking stock.
Okay.
What is the attitude that you're bringing to all of the things you're doing? And is it producing the results you want? Because that attitude will play out in real life actions. It will play out in how you make decisions and then carry them out. It will how you react or don't react to things, and the beautiful thing about attitudes is that you can change them. And you can change them on a dime. You don't have to, doesn't have to be hours. You don't have to pace back and forth. You don't have to go in the corner and face the corner, until you can change your attitude, young man. Go in the corner and don't come out of the corner until you have a better attitude, right? No, it doesn't work that way.
Was that what it's like growing up in?
Yeah, I know. We've all spent time in the corner.
Wow. No, I didn't.
You didn't? No. See, I had a bad attitude, so I spent a lot of time facing that corner.
Man.
But the thing is that as adults, the only thing that really is keeping you from adopting the attitude that works for you is your ego and how it wants to be right and doesn't want to let go of stuff and wants to control everything and has expectations and all of that kind of stuff. And it's a good practice, again, even when you're taking stock, looking at how you're being to see, did you engage your ego or not? How did that work? What were the results that were produced when your ego was engaged versus another time when your ego wasn't engaged, right? All of these things and all of this process will begin to show patterns of what's really important to you. And again, you may have things that you think are important that you got to let go of because they're really not, or you think they're important and they're manifesting themselves in your life and it's not working. I mean, it's stuff that really isn't important to you, right? I have a friend who his wife is not a great housekeeper, okay? And he's meticulous and organized, like me, in many ways. In fact, he's not as bad as I am, but he's in the universe, and it made him crazy.
Made him crazy that his wife
was messy,
not as tidy as he was.
No, she's beyond not tidy.
Okay.
And piles of clothes, dishes in the sink, the floor's not clean, things like that. I mean, and it made him crazy, and it was infecting their marriage because he was unhappy about it. And what happened was, and he called me up one day, and he did his whole rant on how things were going. And I said, so let me ask you something. Is she a good mother to your children? And he said, oh yeah, she's probably one of the best mothers ever. And I said, well, then does this other thing really matter that much to you?
Okay.
I said, does it matter that she's a good mother to your children? And he said, yeah, that's like the most important thing. And I said, well, then this other thing isn't really important. You just think it is, right? And he went, holy shit, you're absolutely right. And he let go. And things changed. I mean, so much changed. And not only that, what's interesting is she started being cleaner. Now, some of you out there may try this and it doesn't happen.
Did the house all of a sudden just turn into a wreck?
And if it doesn't happen, you're gonna send us terrible emails saying, well, I let go of it and she's still messing. Well, that's just sort of how it goes. Because there's no way of predicting how it's gonna, what's gonna happen with another human being. So, but that's what happened for him. And so, no, she's not perfect, and she probably never will be.
Well,
but the thing is it's not important. And it took that moment of someone saying, well, look, compared to what's important to you, is this really important?
Yeah.
I mean, really, in the big scheme of things, and this is what you've got to do in this introspective process, is start to take a look at what are the really important things versus the shit you think is important that you can just let go of, and your life will be so much better. It will be smoother, and you'll be able to focus clearly on the stuff that you've got to handle, the stuff that is really important for you.
Okay.
And serving, for you that are married with children, or even divorced with children. I mean, your children are important, and being able to do the things you need to do to be a good father, or a good husband, or just a good anything, a good member of society, a good man, because that's what we're teaching you to do. We're teaching how to be a good man.
Right.
And I hope you're here, because when I say we want to teach you to be a good man, that something inside you goes, yeah, I really want to be a good man. So there's this process, and you're gonna have to look at things that are maybe not comfortable.
Okay.
Okay.
And we're talking about more than just material things. We're
more
talking about
than material things, and the material things,
intellect, the things that you do for your community, where you stand on a whole lot of different aspects.
Your legacy. Your character. Your taking a look at the things that really matter to you, your family, making a difference in the world.
Okay.
Being responsible, being honorable, the things that we've talked about, that are all part of the developing character, developing high levels of character. It's interesting, they make monuments, they build statues to men of high character.
Okay.
If you were to talk to those men, they would tell you about the amount of work that went into having that level of character, that it wasn't something that they were just born with.
Okay.
That they had to develop it, that they realized it was important to them, and the amount of discipline. I know, another bad word, right? The amount of discipline. But we're talking about practicing disciplines and consistency, that it took, the amount of self-discipline that it took to develop that level of character. It's like saying, am I going to be lazy here or not lazy here? And you choose the not lazy, even though everything in your body and your mind's screaming, choose lazy.
Okay.
Because that's usually what it is for all of us. By the way, if you think you're alone in that, you're not. No. Well, no. When it comes to lazy and not lazy,
lazy wins a lot
for most of us. Yeah. It's like
you have to beat it.
And again, beating it is a discipline, and it's a habit, and it's about consistency.
Yeah.
And the more that you choose not lazy, the easier it is to choose not lazy. That's just a benefit. It's a side benefit of that.
Okay.
But then there are those moments where you just go, fuck it. Did I say can we say the F word on this? We haven't decided if we were going to use.
We'll beep it.
We'll beep it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think. And then we'll figure it out later. I don't know what
yeah. You all know what I said.
I don't know all the rules of podcasting are. We'll figure that out.
The rules of podcasting, yes, indeed.
Somebody's in charge.
I feel like Colbert, when he uses the F-bomb, and they bleep it. But the second that you come back in the bleeping, the audience is falling on the floor laughing and shit. So it's like, what's the point, right?
Right.
Okay. So is there anything else you think we need to say about what is really important? You got to find out.
I think that actions speak louder than words. That's a motto that I live by a lot. And I think if the things that you think are important are the things that you're actually going to do, as opposed to the things you might say are important.
Oh, and you know what? That reminds me that thank you for that.
Okay.
Because that was the one piece I left out. Once you see that something is actually, or at least something you want to be important, even though it's not showing up in your actions, you've got to make a decision. And The decision is to have it show up in your actions. And how you're going to do that. Often it will be to choose to practice a particular discipline,
right,
consistently, or just bring it into your life because it's not there. Because that's one of the things that you're going to learn from this sort of introspective taking stock process, is that there will be things that you'll find that you're not really doing, that you're not actively engaged in, that you want to be. And that's not bad news. It's actually good news, because now you can actually make a decision to become actively engaged in something. And again, with the things that you see that are producing results that are not the result, or not producing results for that matter, or just undesirable results, again, you can make a decision on those actions and put into place disciplines that will correct those actions, that will either, you'll do something else, or you'll stop doing them altogether, whatever it is. But until you're clear about what's important to you, making those kinds of decisions is just stabbing at air. Lightsaber fighting, when there's nothing there, it's just guesswork.
Yeah.
And we want to take the guesswork out of doing this work. Right.
Okay.
All right. So when you see those things that you thought were important but aren't showing up in those actions, as you're taking a look at what you did every day, and what does it say about what's important to you, right?
Yeah. I
know we've repeated this several times, so I like to repeat stuff, especially 3 or 4 different ways.
Reinforces it. It's fine.
Yeah. So when you get there, it's like, okay, I realize that I need to spend more time with my family, because they are important and they are a priority, and I have been neglecting it. The question is, how do I do a better job at that without sacrificing my success at work, right? You're going to have to figure out ways, and creative ways, to be able to do it, because remember, there are only so many hours in a day.
Yeah. Now, I can answer that, but are we going to say that for another episode?
Yeah, well, in fact, we should actually get into that whole process with you.
Yeah.
Because you've raised children and done an amazing job with that.
Thank you.
And incredible kids, your kids. So, and actually, your children are young adults now, really. But
yeah. Yeah, they are.
They're all young adults, but we've seen them go from
Yeah.
So in a great process.
The quick answer for me is that it has to be a conscious effort.
Yeah, it has to be a conscious effort, and
I can go
it
into
may
more detail on that a little bit later, but
difficult decisions, and it may require uncomfortable decisions.
Yeah,
and what you see about what you're doing may not be what you want to see. Again, expectations.
Yeah.
Even with yourself, we have expectations with ourselves, and when we don't live up to those expectations, it's like someone else not doing it. We get upset, and why would you be upset at yourself? Because that's not going to help you. What you can do is to say, "Hey, I need to do something different," and then start on that path. And again, just like mastering anything, right? How the joke about the young man stopping in New York, who's in New York City, and he stops a man and asks him how to get to Carnegie Hall.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And the man says, "Practice, my boy, practice."
Yeah.
Right. All right. So everything in life requires practice and diligence and discipline and repetitive work. Often boring. By the way, men do a lot of very boring, repetitive work in what we do. And don't worry so much about loving the job. Love your ability to do the job well. and love how others love the work that you do.
Yeah. For me, I love
because that's where the real benefit is. Because if we all had to have a job that we loved, life would just stop. The whole world would stop spinning, because most people are not in jobs they love. They're in jobs that work for them enough to remain in them, and they're jobs that provide things that they need to do that are important, more important than loving the job. All right. So, but you can shift. Since we were talking about attitude, we might as well throw it in there.
Okay.
All right. So this is a bonus. So you can shift. If you're hating your job, do you think that's making you good at it? Do you think that's making you good?
No.
You'll get good at your job if you hate it?
No, you won't. You'll do just enough.
You'll do bare minimum.
Yeah.
And bare minimum is I think we can say bullshit.
Yeah.
I'd call bullshit on that. Bare minimum for me is never, in anything that I do, is bullshit, and not worthy of my life. It's not worthy of my time. And I always, if I know that I can do better, then do better.
Right.
Then do better and be better. So so you can change your attitude. Remember, we talked about this. Anytime.
Yeah.
You don't have to go in the corner, right? You don't have to face the corner and then come out when you get your attitude changed. You can change it now. Change it now. You got a sucky ass attitude and you catch yourself at your sucky ass attitude. Change it now. You don't have to wait.
Yeah.
You don't have to get it slapped out of you. Just change it.
I don't mind slapping you.
Oh, maybe. Okay. Well, if you like that kind of thing, then maybe that. Yeah, sure.
Some people are motivated.
Some people are motivated by getting slapped around a little bit, and hey, okay. So that's a bonus. That's all. That's all that is just a bonus.
We're not advocating domestic violence.
No, we're not. We're not.
Just jokes.
So, but yes, you can change your attitude on a dime.
Yeah.
And everything changes. And that is something that I think and hope that you will notice when you start doing this work, when you start taking stock and look at those things and realize that if you had, when something didn't work, right, or you got results you didn't want to get, or not getting any results, or something along those lines, that you could have changed your attitude and everything would have shifted.
Okay.
And armed with that information, the next time it happens, you can shift your attitude.
Yeah.
And then when you get to taking stock, you get to take a look at that.
Okay.
And see how it went with this attitude, and then how did it go with this attitude, and which one works, because that's really all in the end what that we care about, right?
It's trial and error for a lot of people, right? You got to go out there, see if it works. If it doesn't, then don't do it again.
The scientific method's the scientific method. The only way that to prove anything is by experimentation, and to see, does it work, and does it work every time we do this?
Right.
Is it consistent or not? Because we know that, because we've practiced this and experimented and failed, because that's part of experimentation, right?
Yeah. You
will have failures. It's okay. Failure's part of success.
Yeah.
Without failure, it's really impossible to be successful. I wouldn't say most all successful people have failed. Sometimes multiple times, sometimes more than multiple times. There's a CEO of a startup, Silicon Valley startup, and a couple of years ago, he wrote this amazing article because his company now is worth over $1 billion, and he had done, before this company took off, he had done 44 startups, and all of them had failed.
Okay.
And every time one failed, he came up with a new idea and got people to give him money. Now that's really getting people to give you money after you failed 44 times. I think you want to find out what that guy's doing with to get investors to give him a lot of money to start another company, even though that he's repeatedly failed. But they did, and he was able to do that. And finally, he became very, very successful with his 45th or 44th or 45th company.
Okay.
Yeah, 45th company, because he had failed 44 times. So that's another reason to have a good attitude, and to not ever give up, and to not let failure be the final word. Because if you let failure be the final word, you'll never be successful.
So if there's people that have maybe they have a career goal to do something that they're not currently doing, but they need to do a certain amount of work or a certain amount of education in order to get there, you have to continue to put that as an important thing, and to make take stocks. You have to take stocks on where you are and where you want to be.
Exactly. You'll see a gap, and there's always a gap, no matter where you are in life. Whenever I have men tell me that, oh yeah, my life's great, no, there isn't any work that I need to do, and all that kind of stuff, we all know that that's bullshit, because all human beings have work to do, no matter where you're at, no matter what stage. I even saw my father transform his life in the last week of his life, and it was an incredible lesson for everyone around him to see that as long as you're breathing, there's the possibility of transformation. There's a possibility of learning more and being better, and a positive influence in the world. Okay, and maybe at some point we'll use that as a subject too, to talk about that process that my dad went through at the end of his life. But you can't become masterful without time and effort.
Yeah.
Without time and effort, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, a lot of people think talent.
There's no magic here. There's everybody's always looking for the magic bullet, the magic answer, the hack that will, get them around having to do all the hard work. And hacks are great. I'm not saying hacks aren't. Occasionally there's a great hack for something, but for certain things in life, it's just straight time and effort. Yeah. And if you don't put that time and effort into something, then you're not going to get anywhere. And again, you're going to get frustrated, and have expectations and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
Okay.
Definitely not good. So, okay.
Hard work pays.
All right. So that's what's really important to you. And one of the things you can do is send us emails and let us know what you found. We'd like to see what is important to you.
Yeah.
Really. Okay. Not the silly stuff, not the piles of clothes on the floor. Right? Not the dirty socks.
Okay.
All right. Because it's just like I've even seen men upset because their wives were not good cooks. And I was like, well, go out to dinner, or
learn how to cook.
Yeah, you cook. Get her cooking lessons. But don't complain about it, because it's really not that important.
No. If it was, you wouldn't have married her.
Yeah, exactly. So what did you marry her for? Because clearly it wasn't the cooking. And then after you married her, then all of a sudden the cooking becomes important.
Right.
When it wasn't before.
Right. So
let's talk about commitment.
Commitment. Uh-oh.
Yeah,
that's a dirty word.
Yet another bad word, right? Oh no, there's no good and bad, right or wrong, right? Okay, it's just another difficult word that we have to use, and because it is part of being a man. Commitment. It is part of our world is of men is this thing called commitment, and without it, really nothing will ever get done.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to get anything done without being committed. Okay. And there are a lot of self-help organizations out there, transformational organizations, and they have put a lot of effort into this whole thing around commitment.
Okay.
And when they will talk, and they have definitions, and they talk at length about it, and we're going to keep it simple, but we can't have this discussion about developing good character without talking about commitment.
Okay? Absolutely. I mean, commitment is, you get nowhere without commitment. I mean, commitment goes along with consistency.
Yeah.
It goes along with honor and everything. I mean, this is one of the key points of being a man of good character.
Yes, it is. It is. I mean, think about it at the end of your life. What do you want to have them talk about how uncommitted you were?
Yeah.
On your deathbed, do you want to think back and say, "Oh, I committed to feeding the fish in my fish bowl," but that's it, So yeah, it's again, they build statues for committed men, really committed men. Who made a difference in the world, because the men that made differences in the world, major differences, and did big things, it took commitment.
Okay.
It took commitment. So just to be sure that we're clear, and I have a couple of very simple definitions here. The first one, a definition of commit, using it as a verb, is to pledge or obligate oneself. To pledge or obligate oneself.
Okay.
The second one is the one that you all are going to have a real hard time with, but it's actually a definition. It's an engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. And I'm going to say that maybe one more time, just so you can
go.
Let it all sink in here. An engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action. And I know that if we give the definition of the noun, that's the verb. The noun is an engagement or obligation that restricts freedom of action, or pledge to do something in the future. The state or instance of being obligated or emotionally impelled, a state in which there is no option for quitting, failure, no matter what.
Okay, I like that one.
A state in which there is no option for quitting or failure, no matter what.
Yeah.
Which, again, is an attitude too, right?
Right. Okay. I think that's more of what I relate commitment to.
What you think about when you think about commitment?
Yeah, I think that's one hit.
You don't think about a pledge or whatever?
Not so much. I mean, I know that when you commit to something, you're definitely making the effort to see it through.
Okay.
Whatever it is that I'm going to be committed to.
Right, but it's got to start somewhere, right? So it starts though with your pledge, right? It starts with your obligation or pledge. There's a point where commitment starts.
Yeah. I mean, yes. There's a point where commitment starts.
Do you actually make a pledge? Do you actually say something to yourself that says,
normally it's
like,
yes,
I'm going to do this, or somebody's asked you and you said yes?
Yeah.
All right.
Or like when we talked about doing this podcast, I said, hey, let's do a podcast, and right there at that point, that's commitment.
It was yes. It was yes. So here we are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and it wasn't ever, once we said yes to doing this podcast, I know for me that there was never a point where not doing it was an option. It was going to happen.
Exactly. It was going to happen.
We had to get through some things to be able to get here, but yes, we did everything.
Yeah.
That we needed to do to be able to get to the podcast. So, all right. So, restricting freedom of action. I want to talk about that a little bit.
Restricting freedom of action.
Yeah. See, here's
Men have to be free, and you're talking
about I gotta be
taking
free,
away freedom.
Freedom, Mel Gibson, freedom. Right. So we love our freedom, and rightfully so. Okay, so I mean, granted, but freedom is a funny word, and we misuse it in America a lot, unfortunately. Freedom for men, in its truest sense, is lack of choice. And yet, in sort of the Western American influenced context of life, freedom is thought of as a plethora of choices. In other words, you've got infinite choices. You've got choice, so much choice, and you can choose anything. And granted, that is a definition. Okay, that is a definition. But you notice I didn't put that definition in there because when we're talking about men and being a man of high character, developing character, and again, masculine values, which are great values. They're incredible values, and they're not exactly the same values, and what they are is more complementary. I mean, masculine and feminine values, I mean, you can have both. Because they all work together. They all work together. But traditionally, through history, taking a look at things that are important specifically to men versus for them to do their jobs, versus the things that became important for women to do their jobs, that we developed value systems, and they're different. They're different because they're developed to do specific things. So we have to do things that are dirty, fight wars, hunt, protect, provide, and in essence, they're kind of simple in context, right? You go to work, you earn money, you bring it home, and there's not a lot of choice in that, is there?
No, not in the
once
way you're
you've chosen
saying
it.
Once you've
chosen it,
no.
There's just no choice. There's no. I mean, like I always think about my grandfather, who, got up every morning at the same time and went to work at the same time. Was never late, and his 35 years or whatever that he worked till he retired at 65, and came home for lunch every day. Went back to work because the factory, they lived very close to the factory that he worked at, and it was walking distance, even though occasionally he would drive, but he generally got up early enough that he could make the 20-minute walk to work and be there early and get ready, and then he'd come home for lunch and have lunch with my grandmother, and then he'd go back to work and then come home at the same time every day. Okay. And in fact, there was even a whistle that blew when shift started. Whistle blew at the beginning of lunch, and whistle blew at the end of lunch, and then another whistle blew, and you could hear it over the entire town because this was a small town. And so everybody knew the men were coming home. Yeah. Okay. The men knew that. So the women knew that, and the kids knew that. And, Dad's coming home now. Yeah. Everybody was like ready as all the men came out of the factory and they went back home. Okay. So, but there was no choice for him as to whether he was, to the time he got up, to getting to work on time, to, what he did. There was the choice had already been made, And it's what he did. And
that's the commitment that you're talking about.
That's the commitment that I'm talking about, because once that's made, there was never a discussion again. There was no thought of changing it, or I don't like the time I go to work. I don't like the time that I come home.
So,
you know,
how is that a good thing though? How are you telling men of good character to be committed, and it sounds like it's bondage?
It is bondage. It actually is.
Yeah.
It's a form of bondage. But here's the thing. It's a form of bondage that you want. Okay? Because the restriction in choice, the lack of choice, there's a sense of freedom in it. And when you choose these things, when you choose to be committed to something, it's something that's beneficial. You don't choose things that are not beneficial, right? So we need to get on the same page about that.
Okay.
When you commit to something, you don't want to commit to something that is going to hurt you or others.
Okay. Yeah.
Whether physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, whatever it is, you don't want to commit to things. You want to commit to things that are good for you, that serve your purpose.
Okay.
In life,
right?
That take care of the things that are important to you. Again, this is another reason why we did, what's really important first before we're talking about commitment.
Yeah.
Because until you really understand what's really important, it makes making those things to be committed to more difficult, because you don't know. Again, it's like, it's like a lightsaber, right? And you're just stabbing at air. That's all it is.
Okay.
So
when you know what's important,
now the commitments that you make,
and the commitments will involve limiting your freedoms within the commitment, but inside of the commitment, you're free to do everything you want to do that
the commitment tells you to do. See, that's the thing. You are in bondage. You become a slave to the commitment. So you're no longer in charge. The only point that you're actually in charge of this deal is deciding whether to be committed or not. Because once you're committed, all choices are now out the window. You don't have to choose anymore, because the commitment itself is in charge. The commitment itself is making the choices, and you do the things the commitment requires of you in order to serve the commitment. I know you're all going crazy out there, right? You're going crazy.
I'm hearing you. I'm listening.
All right. So I know you're all going crazy, but you're just going to have to trust us on this one.
Okay.
Until you really spend, again, that introspective time, you can take a look at this stuff, and you'll notice that what I'm telling you is true.
Yeah. So here's my visualization on this. Okay. If you're committed into your marriage, you're committed to this one woman,
mm-hmm.
and you and her can do all kinds of things together. You can do things physically, you can do things emotionally, spiritually,
mm-hmm.
with her. She is your committed partner, mm-hmm. to go do all those things with.
Right.
And you can have the freedom to do everything that you want to do in that committed relationship with her. But what you cannot do is do those things with some other woman.
Well, of course, if that's what the commitment is.
Right. So that's what I'm saying as far as like freedom inside of the commitment. Right?
It's more than that.
Okay.
It's more than that, and it includes that. But it's commitment isn't just about what you can't do. It's about what you have to do.
Okay.
See, when you're in the marriage, the commitment that you've made to that marriage will tell you all of the things that you must do in that marriage.
Yeah.
And you don't have a choice. Again, that restriction, that slavery to the choice, the bondage to the choice of being committed, once you've made that commitment, the commitment's in charge, not you. You don't have to be in charge anymore. That's the freedom. When you wake up in the morning, if you've filled your life full of commitments, and again, commitments have to be worthy and honorable, right? Worthy of your life. Your life is worth having great commitments. It's worth serving great commitments. So you want to be careful.
Okay.
And you don't want to just commit to everything, because really, if you're committed to everything, you're not committed to anything. Really, because they all conflict, and you can't end up prioritizing them and screwing one for another, and it gets all messy and unclear. And we're talking about having clear, purposeful, lives for men.
So one thing that I want to add to your notes for our next episode is let's talk about overcommitting.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll get into overcommitting.
Yeah.
But we're just going to talk about committing right now. What it'll do for you is restrict choices. In other words, you don't get to just choose anything you want to do anymore. The things that you do are the things you have to do based on what the commitment is telling you that you need to do. Okay. So if it's in a marriage, it will tell you a lot of things that you have to do that some of them won't be natural. Some of them won't even be easy. Right? But because you're committed, it doesn't matter. You don't have the choice anymore.
Okay.
But that actually is a good thing. It will bring a sense of freedom, and when you wake up in the morning, you know exactly what you need to do. You know how you need to do it. You know the things you need to do today, because the commitments have laid them out.
Okay.
And it's committed to your job, and to your children, and to your wife, and to your career, to your higher purpose, to your spirituality, whatever it is, right, that you've committed to. Then the commitments are in charge, and you don't have to be in charge anymore. The only time you're in charge is choosing the commitments. Once you choose them, you have to, well, look, if you don't surrender to them, there's a very interesting thing that happens.
What would that be?
You become a victim of it. You become a victim of the commitment. And there's a couple ways, or you quit. All right, so there's that too. Okay. But if you don't quit, all right, if you're like, okay, well, I don't quit. I know a lot of you out there say, I don't quit, and that's great. But in a way, you do when you go to victim. And if you go to victim, it's like a whole box of whining. You'll say, well, I'll do it because I said I would. But again, you're now jumping back into that bad attitude thing, right?
Okay.
And that bad attitude is being a victim of something you chose to do. So like when you said, I said yes, right? Yeah. Often a commitment starts with saying yes, but you just want to say yes to everything.
Right.
Right? I mean, committed men are very careful with what they commit to.
Right.
Disciplined men, because they want to maintain their consistency and the quality of their character. And so they don't just throw around yes, yes, yes to everything that comes along. They have to be very clear that they can make that work. Like we said in the definition, no matter what, right? That you're going to be serving this commitment no matter what. You're going to do what you said you're going to do no matter what. And less hurting someone. Okay, so we'll do the caveat, right?
Right. Okay.
We'll just take for granted going forward that all of this work is done without hurting anyone, hurting others. We're not. Well, that's just not what we're about here.
Right.
So less hurting others, you're going to serve the commitment to its fullest extent, no matter what. And if you're being reluctant with that commitment, you're just being a victim, and you'll whine about it, make excuses about it. and sound like a baby.
Okay.
And because babies are not equipped to be committed. Children are not equipped to be committed. They learn how to be committed by seeing committed adults. So a great way for a man to teach his children how to be committed in their lives is to be committed himself. Because if you're not committed, how are they going to learn, right? It's going to be very difficult for them. So another way to be, if you've committed to being a good father, then you have to be committed to being a good man and a committed man.
Yeah.
All right. And
Lead
that
by
means
example.
you serve your commitments 100%.
Right.
And you don't compromise them. You can't ever compromise those things that you say that you're going to do, and that you commit to. And again, there's a sense of freedom in that.
Yeah.
But if you go to victim, here's the problem. When you are committed, you will find there is great benefit in it. There are lots of things that happen. Unpredictable things. Besides the freedom. That's one thing you're going to know right away. You're going to find a certain sense of freedom in living a committed life. The other things can't be predicted, but they show up. And every man and woman that I've ever talked to who were living committed lives will talk at great extent of all of the benefits.
Such as?
Well,
you said other things.
You become more successful, and things show up out of the blue, and it's how people are around you, and it doesn't necessarily mean negotiating life gets easier, but it gets clearer.
Okay.
It gets clearer.
That's fair.
And again, decision making becomes easier and clearer because you're basing those things through the commitments that you live.
Okay.
And again, it's not the reason to do it, but it's a benefit. It's a great benefit in being committed. And what happens when you go to the other thing, when you are, all right, well, I said I'd do it, so I did it, right? When you're complete with it, there's no benefit.
Okay.
It sucks all of the benefit out. Yeah. Being a victim of anything really is awful, and it sucks the life out of it, the energy out of it, and whatever benefits that you would get from making a commitment, serving a commitment, completing because some commitments complete, right? And in completing a commitment, going through that whole arc and that whole process, at the end, when you talk to people who have completed commitments and really done it well, surrendered to it, let it tell them, what to do, and enjoy the freedom in the process. At the end, they'll tell you that they become a better person, right? For us, since we're talking to men, that the men have told me over and over again how much they've become better men by serving the commitment.
Okay.
But when you go to victim, that when you quit, then it all just falls apart anyway. So it's hardly even worth talking about, right? When you quit, you quit. But victim is a nastier version of quitting, because you don't think you're quitting, but you really are. So you're kind of BSing yourself.
Yeah.
And making excuses for it,
stuff, right?
Yeah, and whining about it and all that kind of stuff. And when the commitment is done, yeah, sure, okay, you did it because you said you would, and that's it. There's no more benefit.
Yeah,
there's no value. So why would you do that? And why would you even commit to something if you weren't going to go for it 100%?
Okay.
And what we're talking about, this whole podcast, is about being your best.
Okay.
And and that just means 100%.
Yeah.
100%, not 110%. I don't know what 110% is. Your coaches use it all the time, but
I've always thought it was bad.
When you get to 100%, that's everything, right?
That's
so
everything.
when you've given everything, you've given everything.
Yeah.
And is there more? Well, if there's more, then you didn't give everything.
Right. But I mean, and that's a question that we have asked ourselves at times, even in conversations we've had with each other, is that the best you can do?
Yeah, is that your best? And the thing is that you've got to get introspective to be able to tell the truth about that. Because I mean, sometimes the answer is, I fucking gave everything. Oh, there's that word again.
Yeah, don't worry.
Another bleep.
Yeah.
Yes, the crowd goes wild. I did. I gave my best. I absolutely gave my best. And other times, it's like, oh man,
no, I didn't. I could have done way better than that.
I could have done way better, and because I quit, or I became a victim of it, or for whatever reason, or I BS'd myself, or I got lazy, or I mean, there's a lot of reasons. And again, being introspective will bring all that stuff up, and you'll get to look at it, and you'll get to deal with it.
Introspective.
It's the big word of the day these days.
Taking stock. What's important? Committing. Freedom inside the commitment. What else do we need to summarize?
I don't know. That was a pretty good summary.
Okay.
Actually, not having expectations.
Not having expectations.
Even when you commit.
Don't be a victim of your commitment.
Oh yeah, here's one that I didn't add. We'll just put a little icing as a sort of our cherry on the top.
What's that?
All right. So, I lost my train of thought. You keyed me, and I lost my train of thought.
Okay.
Well, there you go. It went. The train went through and out the station and on the way down the road.
I think we got a lot of good information in here. I think there's a lot of gold nuggets for people to take and work on and practice. You have to actually put this stuff into action in order for you to see any results. If you're just sitting here watching it just for entertainment, then well, thank you for that. But we really want you to go out and do what we're trying to teach you so that you can get the results that are ready for you.
God, I can't imagine this being that entertaining if you're not like
that's kind of true.
Into the subject.
Well, maybe we'll use background music. Hey, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. We'll see you next time, and put this into work. Try it out. Let us know how you're doing.
Yep, exactly. Bad pennies.
Bad pennies.